Welcome to it. It's the Average Joe Sports Show Sunday Live pod. That is Bill Doleman, Gary Sharp, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt. I see a few of you are repping your cheering sections today. Elijah's got his Denver Donkeys lid on. I like it. Little Omaha love for Mr. Sharp.
Yeah, Omaha Royals / Storm Chaser season came to an end last night.
That's rough.
Save the Mountain West.
Oh, you guys look devastated. Thanks.
Save the Mountain West. That kind of like Save Hill Valley. But Nebraska saved their best for the second half as the Big Red able to coast on to victory 28-10. The first half, I don't know, man, was a little rough. It was scoreless. It was ugly. It was penalty filled, and it was heated, man. Coach Rule was, as they say, up to here with some of the calls, and Nebraska's, looking forward to Rutgers coming in as the Big Red's a 6.5-point favorite. A lot of different things, Bill. Yesterday, man, with Nebraska's win in West Lafayette. We'll even squeeze in some T-Town with that insane football finish yesterday in the heart of SEC country.
Well, first of all, the fact that I was able to slay that Brontosaurus burger steak that you gave me yesterday, that may have been the most impressive performance of the day. The slab of meat that tilted my car over to the side. But and well done, I must say. Very well done, I must say. Look, if we're a year away from Nebraska losing every game 13-10, and this year Nebraska winning games 28-10 with lackluster performances, be it in the first half, as it was the case yesterday, or second half, as was the case against Colorado, I think Nebraska fans would be good with that once they come to the realization that I think yesterday proves once and for all that we are in the era of just win. A win's a win. This is the way it's going to be from here on out for not just Nebraska, but for everybody. The days of, winning the first 4 games by an average of 49 points and setting yourself up for Big 8 play or Southwest Conference play or Pac-8 play, those are way, way in the distance now. It is just a matter of winning games. And if you were to look around the NFL right now, and Gary, I know your Chiefs are 3-0, you probably could tell me the score of all 3 games, but all that matters is that they're 3-0. And that's the way college football is headed. You just better be happy that you got to win. And for Nebraska to win the game the way they did late, as opposed to the way the first half went, that I think that's the big positive, is they played well in the second half and put them away.
Yeah, I think at this point you got out of West Lafayette as quick as you can. You won a football game where it didn't feel so good at halftime. I think in the first half they played to their competition. That team they played on Saturday wasn't very good. But Nebraska looked like a 5-7 football team playing a fellow 4-8, 3-9 football team. And in the second half, I thought they played a little bit closer to their standard. And we'll see what the result is. I think when I looked at and listening to Rule, and I went back and listened to him again today. And first of all, you could tell, he needs to stop tapping on the table when he's doing press conferences. But that's a giveaway. That's a giveaway I think he was happy. He was relieved. But he was also a little frustrated because I think after week 5, he'd like this team to be a team-owned, team-run. And I think, he had to kind of will them through yesterday at the beginning of the game. I mean, they did the Oklahoma drill in practice. He's talking about, I want to see guys compete. There were a couple of guys that I wanted to see how they responded. But in the second half, they played to their standard, and we'll see what that means going into a Rutgers team, which is, of course, better than Purdue, and I think is a little bit better than Illinois. But bottom line is they're 4-1. They found a way to win a football game when past years, when calls are going against you and you're like, Jesus, we're leaving points on the field. You get late in the fourth quarter and you go, how did we ever get in this spot? I thought 21 Michigan State was going to happen all over again last night. And they found a way in the second half to string some things together, and they pulled away. And that game could have been 45-10. It was 28-10. They're 4-1. Get the hell out of West Lafayette. Come back and Now you got an important month of October ahead of you.
The concern, obviously, coming out of the game with that first half performance is it was so many of those, as you said, 21 Michigan State, so many errors and mistakes that felt like a Scott Frost-led football team. That was the concern coming out of halftime, in my opinion, with the red zone miscues, the inability to punch it in and cap it off with a missed field goal. I mean, they can move the ball up and down the field, but once they hit the 20, they could not punch it into the end zone. I mean, that's just, I felt like a major theme of the Scott Frost era offensively, and that's concerning, but how different it looked in the second half. Their ability to respond to that adversity they faced in the first half, that was different. The mental fortitude they showed whenever, you know what, they were one play away from losing the momentum in that game at any given time, especially during the first half. And the ability to power through that and rise above and get a win that was as comfortable as it was at the end of the day is it's a statement to the step forward that team has taken. Are they perfect? No. Are they going to be a college football playoff team this year? No, absolutely not. They're a good, not great football team. And you're going to have first half performances like that with good but not great football teams. And it's a win at the end of the day. And it's a win to see the way that they showed some mental fortitude to battle through the adversity in that football game, because there's been plenty of teams. I think it was, to give credit where credit's due, I think it was Mitch Sherman who tweeted during the first half yesterday. He was waiting for that one play to not go Nebraska's way and for the levee to break. And here comes Purdue on top now, 14-0, because something didn't go your way. You throw an interception and boom, look at that. Now you're 14 points behind and the game's over. They didn't show that last night. You were waiting for it. It never happened. You powered through. Was the game ugly? Yes, absolutely. Do I want to watch that first half ever again? No, I don't. But they got the win, and it's a step forward, even though it didn't quite always feel like it yesterday.
Oh, you're going to be able to watch that game, Elijah, because it'll be aired during the summer on BTN.
not the first, not the first half. That tape has been burnt.
Well, that tape was burnt because you were probably buffering because Peacock was a mess yesterday.
Oh, we didn't have any dropouts unfortunately, we didn't have any dropouts with connections, but made the executive decision to move indoors to a different TV in the second half, to see if things can resemble football. You cross into Purdue territory. You were moving the ball with ease. You were getting the ball to Barney. You had some time to throw the football, but I want to drill down on the running game and get your guys' take on, why does it take so long to get Emmett Johnson in the game and lathered up? I know that Dowdell's physical and talented, and I'm not saying don't ever give him the ball or ever play him. I'm not saying that about Ramir either, but they just run different with Emmett Johnson in the ball game, and they're getting 4, 5, 6 on first down from time to time, and it opens things up with Dylan to do what he does, man, and that's just put the ball perfectly to his wide receivers 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, I would be curious, and I hope this comes up tomorrow, about the decision at halftime what to do with the running game. Because don't overlook that Emmett Johnson was the first running back to carry the ball in the second half. And what he did, because all of a sudden the offense, the holes were getting much larger. They were running more outside zone. And then there was the element of they could throw to the running back out of the backfield. I mean, they found Emmett Johnson in the passing game. Now, they didn't ignore Dowdell, and I liked what they did, because then they got into a rhythm of here is Johnson, but then they would sneak Dowdell back into the game. And I thought once that happened, they got more into a rhythm offensively. But I'm curious if Rule says something like he did last week, where he said, I want Dowdell to have 20 carries. I wanted more Emmett Johnson. Did he go to Sad at halftime and say, where's 21? Because we need to mix it up, because all we're doing is we're banging our head on the wall, trying to run between the tackles, and we're getting no push. Halftime running backs were 9 carries, 19 yards. That's unacceptable against that run defense. So I like what they did in the second half, and I wonder if that is something that we will see, or it will be a situation-to-situation thing like we've seen all season at the running back.
We've talked plenty on this show, though, about the running backs matching the play call that is called up and how that hasn't always quite looked right. It looked right in the second half yesterday. With what your offensive line is able to do, I don't think with Mazuka no longer, I would say, in the fold. I don't know. Matt Rule said he's going to address it later this week, so we're going to see what the Mazuka situation is. But with him not in the fold, I don't think this offensive line is able to generate as much push on the interior as they had before. The holes get smaller. What Emmett Johnson has is better vision, which I think you need in a situation like that. And he's got better short area quickness than Dowdell. Dowdell's much more of a battering ram, and I think that's going to be handy and valuable throughout the season. But in the second half, with the way that the running game looked for Nebraska, not as much room on the interior, as you said, Sharpie, a little bit more outside zone. That's Emmett Johnson. That's who that running game is really, really beneficial for. And he's able to get in the game. He's able to show something. I think he's your guy moving forward because based on what I've seen over the last 3 games, I don't think that offensive line is going to generate as much push on the interior without Mazuka. And that, to me, feels like it's Emmett Johnson's time.
You know, I think that I hear my students tell me all the time, C's get degrees. Don't they know it? But you have like a Dowdell is an A back when the play call is up the middle, between the tackles, between the guards, really. That's your guy. And Ramir Johnson comes in, and you got a little more flexibility with the pass, passing out of the backfield, getting him in the flat. But there's such a tell. If Dowdell's in there, it's going to be the hammer up the middle. If Ramir's in there, it's going to be getting out to the outside and perhaps using him in a passing game. But the guy who is the B+ in all phases to me has been Emmett Johnson. I've said it for 2 years. He's good up the middle. He's got good vision to bounce wherever he needs to go, wherever the tackler is. Is he going to have that breakaway speed? No. But he's getting that chunk play of the 8 to 15 yards that I talked about last week and I've talked about forever. He can also catch a couple passes out of the backfield. They had 85 total all-purpose yards yesterday, running and receiving. So I just like the versatility that he brings. It's not as predictable when he's in the game as to what they are going to do. And I think he's more than serviceable. I think he's a guy that can give you 20 touches a game and get you 100 plus, if not all 100 yards on the ground rushing, 100 yards all-purpose in the game, and that gives Nebraska some versatility.
I just like how the run game flows with him, and I like his ability to juke, to stutter step, to make a guy miss, and then finish a run off. And you just want to see this run game be all it can be if you're a Nebraska fan moving forward and start out a game where you're able to run the football along with what you want to do throwing the football and have that whole play sheet available. And I need an answer. What's keeping him Monday through Thursday, presumably from starting on Friday? Maybe they think the best dude for them is Dowdell. Maybe it's all right. You've got this phenom that transferred in from Oregon, so you got to develop him, and I understand that. But right now, the best thing for the run game is Emmett Johnson,
or is the best thing for the run game 17 on a jet sweep.
Well, that's fair too.
He's your leading rusher.
Yeah. But it comes back to, I think Rule would like to and look at the Big Ten is one on the line of scrimmage and with special teams. And there's a couple of those areas where Nebraska isn't where they need to be. But I think Rule is one of those old school guys that would like to have the quarterback handoff game be your starter on offense when you're running the ball, that you can run guard, center, guard. And let's be honest, Mazuka not being in there is a major factor because he was your best run blocker, and he complements Ben Scott, who I think is having a great year. The other thing is Bryce Benhart is not having the year that we thought he would have or how he finished last year. But I think Rule would like to be old school where he'd like to hand off the football and be able to run guard, center, guard and not have to, run counter and and jet sweep and toss. He would like to be old school. Well, he can't be old school because they're not able to move the pile when it's just one-on-one battles. They've got to kind of gussy up the running game to get yards. But whatever they are now, you got to do it. If it's more Jakori Barney, that's a great asset because if he gets turned with that speed and you get a seal block, which I thought Nebraska's wide receivers were better blocking. And of course, everyone's going to point out a great block by Alex Bullock late in the game. If they can do that, then I think you got to stick with it. But you're right. Everything we said about Emmett Johnson, he just adds a different dynamic that Dowdell can't give you because Dowdell loves to run to contact. Emmett is able to run away from it.
Well, and Gary, maybe the solution for the running game is to go Wandale Robinson with it, put Jakori Barney in the eye, run him between the tackles. It worked great with Wandale.
Positionless football.
Yeah,
And then he's
you know
going to
what?
transfer to Kentucky.
And that got brought up on the show, the post-game show I was doing yesterday, and I'm like, God, he's 150 pounds. Is he going to get killed? I don't know. The one thing, and maybe this will lead to more of a discussion, and it definitely will throughout the week. Hey, give credit to Satterfield in their development of Barney, but also where they're lining him up. You look, they are placing him at different spots around the field, and everybody is aware of 17 now because you have to be. And that's not, and I think there is more to his game that will continue to expand. But I think there were 4 different areas where I noticed yesterday he started at where he ended up touching the ball. There was one time he was like an offset in the slot. He was off the line of scrimmage, not necessarily a slot wide receiver, and they found the way to get him the ball. So that's encouraging because that's a weapon that you definitely can use, and I think Nebraska's using him the right way.
Let's give some shout-outs this morning. It's the Average Joe Sports Show Sunday live pod every Sunday at 10:30. Gary Sharp, Bill Doleman, Elijah Herbel, Chris
We were
Schmidt.
a minute late today. We're getting better.
Fashionably
Hey,
late.
people need to understand, Schmidt is at church and where, I'd love to be, but Schmidt's at church. He's got potlucks in fellowship hall. He's got to keep the door open for people as they exit and go in for second service. Sometimes a 10:30 is an ish start. Okay.
Well, the negotiation last night was, as I'm texting Junior, like, all right, dude, let's, it's been a few weeks since we've gone. Let's go tomorrow. He's over at his buddy's house watching Bama and Georgia, that instant classic. And he's like, sure. All right. But he's now off to brunch with his friend. And it's like, well, all right, we're going early because we've got the pod at 10:30.
All right, continue with your shout outs.
Okay, so you've got Charles that came in. Charles, good to have you. Good morning, friends, Huskers and countrymen. Good to have Charles in. Tim checks in. Victorious Sunday greetings all. That's pretty nice. Walter's not happy with Easy Ed and the special teams. Justin says hello. Vic is in. Says, holy crap, I didn't miss the start. Cliff is here from Florida. Got to say what's up to Cliff in Florida. KB is here. Winners Sunday. The other Dave is here. The question from Brian, did Schmidt figure out where Bill hid his toaster? The joke from yesterday was using kitchen appliance items, i.e. the toaster, and after that first half, Sharpie, Nebraska fans wandering into the bathroom with a toaster.
That was just awful football. I mean, that was awful football on both sides. And it kind of dictated by you had no guarantee that you were going to be able to kick a field goal. Nebraska struggled on third down yesterday. Then there were penalties that were involved as well. I mean, that the whole thing from officiating to the game being on Peacock to Nebraska's first half, again, those are the kind of things that derail Nebraska. They at least were able to stay the course and find a way in the second half. But that first half, just offensively, this is where it's going to get – you can't let that happen. I looked at Washington on Friday night, and I thought they left about 17 points on the field against Rutgers, and they got beat by a field goal. Moving forward, the next 3 games, which you'll have Rutgers, Indiana, Ohio State, man, if you have chance to get points, you got to be able to get points. And Nebraska with driving, and they played on Purdue's side of the field yesterday. They only had 28 points to show for it. That really could have been like a 45-10 game, but you can't leave points out there. And the inability to be able to drive and then stall out and not be able to go walk off the field and go, hey, we got 3. They just, that's something that's they're going to have to work around. But I thought, again, a first half like that, we've seen it before. Elijah alluded to it in the Scott Frost era. Those first halves came back to bite Nebraska. And you sit there late in the fourth and you go, how is this game ever scoreless? Or it's not scoreless, but how is this game ever close? It shouldn't be that way. And Nebraska dictated when they came out in the second half. I will say one thing about another growth point of this team, and they're still a work in progress. I think they're a week-to-week team, is when Purdue finally scored to make it 3-0. I thought it was a great response that Nebraska drove down the field and scored a touchdown. Instead of they went 3 and out or they punted from midfield, they drove down the field and they put up 7. And I thought that was a great response. And then they started to get complimentary football, where the defense, which played really well yesterday, had a major bounce back, was able to hold their own and allow the offense to find their footing. I think that was important yesterday moving forward because they found a way to get back to the complimentary football that we saw in the first 2 weeks.
But to your point, Sharpie, moving forward, at what point now is it go for it territory on 4th down if you're down in the red zone? I might be back to 4th and 15. Anything less and you're going for it? I mean, there's no confidence in the field goal kicking right now.
Well, you could just throw it up and get a DPI flag. I mean,
but like Sharpie, you called them a week-to-week team. They're a week-to-week team in a week-to-week league in the Big Ten, which I think is going to underscore the importance of kicking. And if you can't kick it, I mean, I have faith in 15, as you said, Schmidt to toss it up, get a DPI. I mean, he's been underthrowing some deep balls, but it's been working for him. He sees that defender's back turn. He says, I'm going to throw it back shoulder. If it works, it works. But I'm at the point where I'm a lot more confident in that than the field goal kicking. Like, anything less than 4th and 15, I'm probably going to be screaming on my couch, go for it.
Well, the scenario that we wanted to see play out when we were on the show last week was, what will Nebraska do if it gets an opportunity on 4th down or faces a situation, 4th down in the red zone? Will they go for it or will they kick it? And the answer was they sent Heinrich Harburg out there. And I would love to, this is one of my regrets yesterday, I would love to have seen what they were going to do with Harburg in that opening drive or whatever it was when, it was the opening drive. And they get the procedure penalty. But was Harburg going to throw it? Was Harburg going to, Jalen Hurts it? Was it going to be a handoff? I was interested to see what that play was going to be, but we got the answer that we were looking for. It's a 4th and 1 or 4th and 2? Do you kick or do you go? And right off the bat, we found out they were going to go for it. And then you got the penalty, you back it up, and we all know what happened after that. But there's so much that happened in that moment that I wanted to see to fruition and see how they were going to use Harburg. And unfortunately it didn't happen.
So the part of the special teams discussion, which is a rightful discussion. I mean, Nebraska was going to punt from the 34-yard line. I mean, they got the penalty that moved them back. So that tells you enough. But is the lack of confidence in whole or the whole operation? Because I think the whole special teams IQ is really bad. I don't understand the first punt. Why is a gunner in the back of the end zone? Why is he running out the back of the end zone when the ball could have been down at the 1? There's no way in God's green earth they teach that. And then I don't get on punt coverage, nobody ever looks in the air like to see, hey, where the ball is coming. I think the IQ on the special teams is really, really poor. And then you factor in, I'm not sure where Hull's head is because they don't exude confidence. And then when you get out there, you're putting the guy on an island. You can't roll a snap back to the holder. No. I mean, that's something I might go see today when I go watch, a 5th grader go play Pop Warner football today. So it's all over the map. They've got to fix it. In a league where special teams are really good, you can't afford to be poor in the different areas there. And yesterday almost came back to bite you, but guys, moving forward, if I have a play sheet in my hand, I'm working on my favorite 4th and 6 plays today if we are close to the red zone. Because I don't know that there's a guarantee of 3.
You got to do it. I don't know what they work on. Presumably they practice. It's an emphasis. It's something that is harped on publicly by the head coach. And when push comes to shove, you have bad snaps, tough holds at times. You're not confident in drilling a field goal, and you're not confident in calling for the field goal tee because it is not stable right now. And to me, we got to really examine about how you're sending out your tasks and how are you managing what's being done at practice. Because I know they practice. I know they recruit kids. And it's still, when the moment's there, it looks like they've done none of the above.
And I know right now we're discussing complaints with the special teams, I do want to turn this around really fast and say, have yourself a day, Brian Buschini.
Yeah.
First
3
off,
tackles.
3 tackles. He has that one punt trickle into the end zone, as Sharpie alluded to, where your guy's getting blocked to the back of the end zone. It trickles in, and that was frustrating. But what does he do on the next punt? It's a similar error by a gunner, where a gunner comes around the punt returner, is just standing right behind him, not looking in the air, and the ball lands at about the 4-yard line and checks straight backwards. Buschini learned the lesson on that one and pinned Purdue at the 10. I think that was the start of the second quarter whenever he did that. Great punt there, 3 tackles. The long snaps were coming in anywhere and everywhere on those field goals, and he got them down. He did all he could, made a couple tackles on some blocks. Like, good day, Brian Buschini. On a really poor special teams day, he had a good day.
Hey, he saved Nebraska a touchdown on that blocked field goal at the end of the first half. That was that could have ended up as 6. There was funny, and I'm glad you brought him up in terms of, he had the suplex of a tackle as well.
That was good.
I looked at the stat broadcast. There was a point in the game where he was tied for the leading tackler on Nebraska.
I think my stats are right here. I was looking into this during the game yesterday. I'm pretty sure on the season, he now has more tackles than multiple members of Nebraska's defensive line. Kai Wallen, Elijah Judy. I think he's now tied with Prince Will. Like, it's ridiculous. But hey, good for him. I think he's got a judo background and it's coming in helpful. So I think it's judo, if I remember correctly.
Judo and also woodworking. That's the other
woodchopper.
hobby.
Well, so now moving forward, because we expect the Rutgers game to be close, and you're gonna need the option of a field goal. When extra points look fine, it's of course not as long, but it's still like it would be a manageable field goal. So is a 25-yard field goal the max right now that you're comfortable with?
If I'm that close, I'm going for it.
I do know if I'm close, I'm not taking 15 off the field. Even if 10 comes out, I'm not taking 15 off the field.
Yeah. No, I'm out on I'm out on field goal attempts the rest of the year. And you just play leech ball. That's what we're going to do. That's my suggestion.
But here we focus on what we're covering. But man, watching a lot of college football yesterday, Ole Miss, the Penn State-Illinois game. I mean, are the 2 biggest issues that we have in college football in this wonderful game that always delivers every Saturday, officiating and kicking?
Yes, and that's your order, because you have disastrous calls made every weekend. You pray they're not intentional, but it's an absolute train wreck for Matt Rule to get a call right the last 2 weeks, because you got an end zone interference. It's not whistled. And then you have a beautifully executed little swing out to Ramir, and a better job of Fedoni to create traffic without creating an accident. And they whistle him for it. And he just lost it. He just lost it. And I don't blame him, because most of the 1.9 million at home yesterday afternoon also lost it, because penalties, and then some of them are earned and some of them are conjured up in midair.
How do the officials just not get together on a play like the pick? Because there seems to be an emphasis on that this year in a lot of games. I've seen that pick interference call probably more in the first third of the season than maybe all of last year. It just seems like that's a point of emphasis this year for the officials. You always hear that going into a season, but how do they not get together and say, you know what, I think you may have, he didn't hit him, and just pick up the flag? It's better to pick up the flag as a crew and say, you know what, they got it right, as opposed to one person's maybe ill-cited call and just had it in their mind, like, who's the guy that blew the perfect game for the Tigers pitcher, just had it in his mind. Jim Joyce. He just had it in his mind that he was going to be safe, and he called him safe. So it just seems like sometimes you have officials that are just going to call it because they've been told to call it. But get together, huddle up, and say, you know what, I didn't see it here. He in this case, he didn't even touch the guy. there is no penalty for offensive pass interference. Okay, great. We move on. But instead, now Rule, I think, was justified in calling for the review. They couldn't review whether that was a pick or not. They could review whether the ball was caught ahead or behind the line of scrimmage.
Yep.
But I think the reason they asked for that was so that the officials would see how egregiously bad they missed the call. And if it had gone their way, so be it. But I think Rule was saying, look how bad this was, and I expect a little help down the road. And he probably got it. Although some of those DPI calls were egregious too, that there was interference. But the officials got to get together and say, look, that wasn't interference. Okay, we pick up the flag and move on.
Well, what's frustrating about it, I guarantee you, for Matt Rule, is the fact that, I mean, officials, they do preparation on teams before they come in and do a game. There's little points of emphasis. Fedoni's been called for that pick route once a game, it feels like. I think that's the 5th one of the season he's been called for. Maybe not in every single game. It may have been twice against UTEP, but I'm pretty sure that's the 5th time he's been called. He's got a reputation. Officials are going to be ready for that. You can tell that Matt Rule and the coaching staff have changed the coaching on how they're running that pick route, and he still gets called yesterday. That's the frustrating part about it, is it's been coached differently. He's performing it differently. He's performing it in a legal way. But the officials, I think, coming into the game are expecting to see this. So they think they see the penalty there whenever there isn't a penalty there. And that's what's got to be frustrating, because I guarantee the coaching has changed and how they want Fedoni to do that. He does it right and he still gets called, which adds to the frustration.
Well, and the thing about Bill's point about officials seeing that in real time is it never, there was no contact. So if you're an official and it's going in full speed, you're looking to see if it knocks the defender off his path. Fedoni got out of the way. The Purdue player never tried to sell it. He was chasing after Ramir. And so I would think that's an easier thing to see, because the Purdue player's angle was exactly the same. It wasn't impeded by Fedoni. I think, and then you watched the Nebraska game yesterday, guys, watching the Georgia-Alabama game in terms of pass interference, they let those guys beat the crap out of each other on defensive backs against wide receivers. The sport has an issue with, I think they need to find a way to get officials under the same umbrella. So it's not just Big Ten officials, SEC officials. Because I will tell you, because watching the Penn State-Illinois game, and then, of course, the one that needs more attention, and thankfully Fox is hammering them, is the Minnesota-Michigan onside kick, is the Big Ten. The Big Ten is a moneymaker, and the Big Ten right now has a major officiating problem across the board in their league. And they can't afford to have that as one of the narratives of the league right now. They've got enough resources to figure out what is the issue, what can we make it better for you, what guys should be officiating our games, what should not. Because if that's going to be a storyline in this league, that is an awful look. But I think we need to find a way to get officials not designated as, that's an SEC crew, that's a Big 12 crew. I think we need to get them under a consortium where everybody is just working games, and the best work the best games, and we trickle on down. Because right now, it's bad in the Big Ten, and it's frustrating. And I hear more coaches, guys, that are speaking out about the officials than we've ever heard before. Usually that's, I can't say anything about the officials, but coaches have crossed that over. They're like, nope, they're fair game. Here we go.
But here's the thing, Matt Rule sends his report in, as does every coach, immediately after the game. There's an analyst who's grading everything for them. They're going to review it. They sent it in probably last night when they got in there. The Big Ten or the SEC or whatever conference is looking over those reports, and what they do with them, who knows? They certainly will respond back to the school privately. But people have always said, we want to know publicly what the grades are. You are never going to know what the grades of the officials are only until the college football playoff or the Super Bowl, because those are the people who get to continue to work into the postseason. They're being rewarded. But during the regular season, and I'll tell you why you're never going to know what the results of those reports are, is because there's a little thing that used to just reside in Las Vegas, and now it is everywhere, and you've got it on your phone. Because if you were to start putting money down on what officials are where, that's going to affect the whole lines and all of that kind of stuff. So that's one of the main reasons why, and I've been told this, you never hear the reports of what the officiating is, because it could have an impact on the business angle of games that are played on Saturday and Sunday.
And as you talk about the business angle, here's something to consider. Coaches, in college football make millions of dollars. Players in college football make millions of dollars. It's a multi-million-dollar business, and you have part-timers officiating it. The NFL is the same issue. You have guys that are working their day job. They're working their 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. They hop on a flight on Friday night, and they're headed out to college football on Saturday, and it's right back to the day job. We can have full-time officials in college football. It's a multi-million-dollar business. I know the NFL has the same model of part-time officials, but if you have millions and millions of dollars on the line every single weekend with coaches, players, and gambling, raise that level of standard. You gotta have full-time officials that it's what they do for a living, because you currently don't have officials that this is what they do for a living. This is a hobby, a side gig. College football is not a hobby sport though anymore. It may have used to been, not anymore. It's time to invest in the officials, make them full-time, get training programs, really invest into that side of the game, and that would help things a lot. The NFL's got the same issue with part-time officials. Football's the one sport. I mean, baseball, professionally, full-time officials. Basketball, professionally, full-time officials. Guys that it's what they do. Their job is being an official. You don't have that in college football. You don't have that in the NFL, and the quality of officiating suffers because of it.
Let me look back at the pass interference, and Purdue's got some issues, and other than the last drive where Card was just pitching and catching, they had more penalty yards than they had total offense. Think about it for a moment. If Purdue isn't very good with their defensive backs and they feel like they're being outmanned and they can't make a play, was that actually the smart thing to do against Nebraska yesterday?
Absolutely. You have
because it's not a spot foul in college.
No, it's 15, and you just keep on 15-yarding them down the field. But guess what? It's better than 1st and goal at the 8 or giving up a touchdown.
But
he was absolutely brilliant.
But also think about this. Purdue's smart. They watch film. They're like, I don't know if Nebraska can make a field goal. Why not employ this strategy? I mean,
yeah,
because there were a couple of those DPIs, and I would say that all of them were legit. But there were ones where I'm looking. You don't need to do that. Why don't you play the ball? I don't think it was going to be a catchable ball. It was just bad technique on your part. But then I'm thinking, wow, is that the wise move to do? Like, if you feel like you're screwed and it's going to be like a 25-yard completion, why not get physical with the wide receiver, see if they call it, and it's only 15 and we move on. Now that's a terrible way to live, but when you're at the bottom of the league, maybe that's the way to go.
Well, and on the flip side of it, offensively from Nebraska, is it a strategy now? These underthrows from Raiola on man coverage on the sideline, is it a strategy, or is he just continuously underthrowing? Because he gets the call 9 times out of 10 on those back shoulder underthrown balls where the defender has to go through the receiver.
You know who does that? So that's what Mahomes does.
Yes.
I don't want to throw that on there, but you know what, Elijah, I thought the same thing yesterday, but then I'm like, God, you know what? He's on a stretch here of some of the deep balls are a little bit underthrown, and I don't want to believe that it's intentional. But it could be that way when you see that and you process it and you're like, you know what? If I throw a 50-50 ball, we're going to get a flag here. I don't know. That would be a question for Dylan, and he'd probably give you a little wink. No.
Guys, we've hit on officiating. We've talked run game. Nebraska able to do something that a lot of past Nebraska teams haven't done, and that's survive a bad half a ball and not have it end up biting them to lose it. You've seen that movie too many times. So let's look at the league as we move forward, and we've kind of touched on Rutgers and the heater they've been on. Tight ball game wins in Blacksburg, a tight win Friday night where they were up comfortably, and then it got to pucker time. Penn State and Illinois played their butt off last night, and great opening drive, and it was a defensive struggle. It looked like it was going to be a shootout, but just too many plays made, each team missing a field goal, to your point, Sharpie, with special teams and kicking in this conference and in college football. So as we talk Sunday morning, the last Sunday, September, where do you think Nebraska is at power ranking wise? If you're to stack this league, I think USC showed a wow second half against Wisconsin. Wisconsin was playing good ball, and then they pulled a Wisconsin and were pretty anemic in the second half. We'll know more about Oregon. I didn't even see the score. How bad did Oregon win, or did they win last night?
42-14, I think.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah, UCLA might not win another game.
Yeah. So there's that. What neighborhood's Nebraska in as we head into, week 3 of conference play?
Middle.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the safe way to play it. I think Nebraska's defense is still has the potential to be an elite defense. It's not living up to the potential. It's not living up to the level of play that we saw last year. Maybe that's because coaches have figured it out a little bit more in terms of how to attack it. But I still think that, you saw James Williams get a couple of sacks yesterday, and MJ Sherman.
5. Yeah.
And again, that's against Purdue, but that can be a confidence builder for that defense. Jamari Butler needs to step up. Robinson got a sack yesterday. Tommy Hill's got to be healthy, but I think that defense is good enough to put Nebraska in that probably 6 range. The offense can't rely on a true freshman quarterback all the time to bail them out with whatever plays that he makes. There has to be consistency in the ground game, I think, to elevate. I think Nebraska's in the middle third, somewhere in there. I do like Nebraska's pass protection. They've done a nice job, other than late in the Illinois game, protecting Dylan Raiola. So kudos to that. I think Nebraska's in that 6 to 10 range right now in the Big Ten, and I think that's because the defense has potential, and Raiola has been as good as advertised.
6 to 10 is fair. If you tier out the Big Ten, you have your Big Ten championship contenders, which right now there's probably 3 teams up there. Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State is probably the 3 that are contenders to play in the Big Ten championship game. Then you have your college football playoff contenders. Nebraska's not in there. That's your. I'd still put Michigan in there. Then you have USC. You have.
Put Illinois in there, the way they've looked.
That's what I was debating in my head right now. Are they a potential college football playoff contender?
Iowa?
Nebraska's not in that tier. Nebraska's, as Bill said, in that 6 to 10 range. The range of teams that, are they going to be competing for a college football playoff berth this year? No. Could they take down anyone in the conference if it's their day? Sure. Could they also lose to anybody in the conference if it's not their day? Also probably yes. That's where Nebraska, I'd 6 to 10, 7 to 10, somewhere in there. That's where I'd put Nebraska.
I would agree with that. I think in college football this year, the definition of great to very good to pretty good. I mean, it's the way it is playing out of how many teams this morning can you wake up and go, man, that is a great team in college football.
There's about 4 programs.
So
Georgia,
Alabama,
Texas.
Ohio State, Texas.
and Ohio State.
Yep.
Okay, so basically the same 4 that we've.
It's always.
And then I think everybody else finds their way. That's why this is the beauty of this sport is it is week to week. If we're having this discussion yesterday morning, nobody is going, you know what? I think Kentucky's going to go into Oxford and beat Ole Miss. It's the week to week thing that, every situation is different. Who knows? Washington put up 500 plus yards on Rutgers last week. Will they allow Nebraska to put up 500 yards? Washington's place kicker was 1 for 4, missed from 55 at the end. Next week, he could turn around and be 4 for 4. I think it's a week-to-week thing where you just have to, when the ball is kicked off, some games you're going to have more talent than the other. You're going to have better coaching. You just have to find a way to win, And we don't look and go, 28-10 over Purdue. I guess we got to reassess Nebraska. We go, hey, they won a game and move on. They're 4-1.
Average Joe Sports Show live pod on Sunday. We invite you to check us out 10:30s as we'll recap Nebraska's weekend. That's Gary Sharp, Bill Doleman, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt, and like and subscribe the Average Joe Sports Show on YouTube. Tell a buddy, AJ Sports Pod on Twitter. Give us a follow there, Spotify and iTunes to download and take with. Guys, we'll hit a midweek and preview Rutgers. We've got to spend a minute, though, on the hype being real for Bama, Georgia. We might get a sequel, maybe a third showing. We'll see. And Elijah and I'm getting text messages last night as I'm kind of winding down for bed. I had stopped watching because
Wait, Elijah was sending you text messages when you were in bed?
I was getting ready for bed. 28 nothing.
The allegations are not true. No.
No. It's 28 nothing. And like, you're just, Bama's beating the hell out of Uga. And then Elijah's like, dude, you gotta watch the second half. I'm like, I'm okay. Because Elijah and I put a parlay down with our friends at Ameristar. And all we needed was Georgia. It was a pick 'em, Georgia to win. And all three other legs of the parlay had hit, Elijah. You got the Rutgers cover and win. We had the Ole Miss in points. They won outright. Maryland, Indiana, overs, bang. So all we needed was Georgia to do Georgia things. And for 13 seconds last night, Elijah and I were richer men.
Man, that Williams kid from Bama.
How fun is that, dude?
That was one of the best plays I've seen in college football this year. That touchdown reception to hit the brakes, go into some sort of spin move and send two defenders into each other, then race to the house. Oh my. That was one of those, I couldn't even be mad. I wasn't even mad that the parlay didn't hit because that was a fantastic game of football. I will say,
a little upset.
It happens. It happens. I got to enjoy it. You know what? Maybe the real win, Schmitty, was the enjoyment we had along the way. And we had some enjoyment with that parlay.
You lost.
We're the team. We're the team that we need to make it happen is getting crushed for 2/3 of the game. They reel off a epic comeback and take the lead.
Well,
and then what happens with 2 minutes left?
Yeah.
Guess who Alabama's throwing to?
Well, think about how loud
a 17-year-old kid is who they're throwing to.
I know.
Yeah.
We all knew it.
That is the first round pick of my fantasy team roughly 3 years from now. That's not just a 17-year-old kid. But speaking of like freshmen coming and competing, imagine what the discourse would have been at halftime surrounding Carson Beck if Dylan Raiola was on that Georgia bench. Think about what Georgia fans would have been calling for. How that may have been a game where if Dylan Raiola was on the sideline, we may have seen him in the second half yesterday. Thank God he's at Nebraska, but that would have been interesting as well because, man, down 28 points to Bama, you're looking at the backup quarterback. And if that backup quarterback was Dylan Raiola, things would have gotten interesting in Tuscaloosa last night.
ESPN always does, as the season goes on, they name their weeks. I don't know why yesterday wasn't rivalry week 1 because I got a chance to watch the classic Stanford-Clemson battle again, just nothing but epic football, or SMU against Florida State in AAC, the best that the ACC has to offer. The only one that made sense was Boise State and Washington State. That one seemed to make a little bit of sense.
How'd that end up? I fell asleep.
Boise State won. I was on. By the way, Oregon won 34-13 over UCLA. Thank you, Bob. I think it was 45-24.
Okay.
Boise State.
But there are some weird combinations of conference matchups that are taking place. And SMU made such a big deal out of that Florida State. I mean, they brought out Eric Dickerson, presumably in the Mustang that they gave him back in 1984.
Trans Am.
And their Trans Am. Yeah, that was interesting that he comes out in this fancy convertible. George Bush was on hand for the coin toss. And I'm like, is this like some national championship game? What the storied history of Florida State SMU epic battles goes back minutes. Anyway.
No, it's all right. Well, we'll gear up and get ready for the Tony Soprano Bowl.
Can I ask
on Saturday?
I'm going to ask the question here to the room. We're going to spend more time on this later in the week, but let's just get the Sunday feelings out. What's your level of concern with Monangai? Rutgers running back. That guy is one of the best in the country. He's a future NFL guy. He's looked fantastic. What's your level of concern there? Just quick. We're going to dive into it further. Just quick thoughts.
Hi.
Big concern because Nebraska, even though the defense played better and they had a nice bounce back yesterday, and they showed they weren't as vanilla as they've been, they still have the leaky yardage.
Their tackling in the first half was brutal.
Frostonian.
No, it's fair.
Hey, I was speaking of the tackling because, in the first half, Maccabee was slippery. Found it curious. They started to play like Vincent Shavers played quite a bit in that game. Like
He
some
should've.
guys,
He made some tackles.
Marquise Buford played more. Now, Nebraska having their two cornerbacks at one point injured. Wright came back into the game. But I wonder, we wondering when they will cut down the rotation on defense. I don't think they're going to cut down anytime soon. The Thompson injury was a new development yesterday that he wasn't available. But the leaky yardage, because I think Rutgers will try to play the game in a phone booth. And is Nebraska equipped to play a game in a phone booth?
They've shown the ability to do it, right? The last year and a half. They're going to have to be strength in numbers with their tackling, because when they have 2 or 3 or 4 guys to the ball, they did a good job on first down. Purdue didn't Illinois them on first down with runs, typically. So it was better. But you have some of your upperclassmen leaders that were right there, and they just missed tackles.
Why do you guys think it's 6.5? The line right now that came out this morning is Nebraska's 6.5-point favorite.
I think a lot of it has to do with it being a road game for Rutgers. I mean, I think Nebraska's home environment can help will this team to victory. Plus, Nebraska's offense is uneven as it's been. They are balanced. I mean, they've shown the ability to run it, and they've shown the ability to throw it. So
I think Washington's total offense numbers against Rutgers are one thing, but they had over 500 yards.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one thing that leads me to believe that's why the numbers might be inflated. I mean, so you look at it, it's a touchdown. Can Nebraska put up those kinds of yards through the air with Raiola? Nebraska probably can't do that with its ground game. But I think that they look at the numbers that Washington put up and the chance that that they had a chance to win the game at New Jersey. That's the only thing I can think of is Washington's output, and the game, as Schmidt said, is in Lincoln. That can be a difference too.
The other thought
I think that's high.
I think it is too. I think, and look at Colorado's not a slug that we thought they might be.
They won a rivalry game yesterday with Central Florida.
They rolled yesterday and looked pretty good doing it. So Colorado may be better than we thought. Illinois is better than we thought with their effort against Penn State. And that was a touchdown ball game. It was 0-2 for Illinois in turnovers. That was your difference in a defensive struggle.
Also, I think it was 250 rushing yards for Penn State, I think, as well. They ran the damn ball.
That was impressive.
So that's a discussion down the road for this week, because what is Harburg's involvement? Penn State used a Wildcat quarterback in that game against Illinois.
Great for him.
Who had some success. Can you win a game next Saturday against Rutgers where you only score 21?
Yeah. Yeah, you have to. But Elijah better get off the field. You might have to.
That glorious thing on your lip, you're squeezing it in.
Yeah, I don't know, man. The Nebraska's offense, I think, as the season goes on, is how they're going to have to win football games. The defense performance was great yesterday. Don't get me wrong. I think this Rutgers offense is going to pile up some rushing yards next week, just because that's how good Monongai is. The Husker offense is, I think, going to have to put up some points next week. Does he go Ricky Williams and bust off 20, 40, 60-yard runs, or is it death march 8-minute drives where he's just slamming you for 4, 5, 6? That's what I'm wondering.
Like Illinois did.
Yeah.
That's to me, Illinois, to a certain extent, you and I provided a blueprint for how to attack Nebraska's defense. Illinois perfected it, keeping the ball between the tackles in its ground game, even between the guards in its ground game, and chewed it up. I don't think Rutgers is going to leave it to Kaliakmanis to win the game the way Illinois allowed Altmaier to kind of control the game as well. So I think Rutgers is going to be their ground game. I don't think it's going to be their quarterback play. I am intrigued because Gary said 21 points and not 24 or 27, which would mean 2 field goals.
Well,
I know why he said it.
I think it'll be a game. I think it'll be a game which will have lower possessions,
Yep.
And you can't, again, Washington left 17 points out there. Their field goal kicker was 1 of 4. They only scored 18 points and they had 500 plus yards of offense.
Yep.
So in a game that's going to have limited possessions and it's going to be played between the 20s, and then it could get, who knows what happens when you get in the red zone. It'll be very, very important for Nebraska. They need points. They can't come up empty. They can't come up empty in the red zone. They can't have where we could have had 3 and we've got 0. It's going to be one of those games that every time you have an opportunity to stick the ball in the end zone or put it between the pipes, you have to be able to find a way, because it's going to be a low-scoring game.
Well,
and I think it would tell you a lot if Nebraska could win a game like that where they only had to score 21 and 21 offensive points.
21 offensive points, and what type of point setup will Rutgers get from their special teams?
Nebraska chasing
Return
7.
game.
Chasing 7.
Well,
Will chasing you the 3 be back this week?
I don't know.
Because I don't think one came out after Illinois, right?
It was the same way last year with it wasn't chasing 3 last year, but whatever they called their little in-season thing last year, they released it after wins. So
Okay.
I'm sure the story this week will be the adversity. You'll get a quick little taste of the Illinois game, something very brief, and then the response, and expect it after wins.
All
I
right,
want
so
to
I
hear,
changed
I
it
want
to
to hear the halftime.
I changed it to buying 3. Yeah, I'd like to hear halftime, but I'd also like to hear, or maybe we have a GoPro or Rule is mic'd up when they're doing the Oklahoma drill on the field during warmups yesterday.
That'd be good.
Oh, hello. That I think Rule really wanted to talk about that after the game. I mean, he was wondering if guys were going to compete. Hello.
Yep. Love that. And maybe we'll get a little more explanation tomorrow. Bill Doleman, Gary Sharp, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt, The Average Joe Sports Show, Sunday Live. Appreciate you. Like and subscribe. Tell friends about us. The Average Joe Sports Show on YouTube. The Average Joe Sports Show on Twitter. The AJ Sports Pod. Give that a follow. Spotify and iTunes, ratings and feedback. We appreciate that. Sharpie, enjoy your NFL Sunday, brother.
Thank you. Go Chiefs. Down to the Broncos.
Appreciate it.
Hold on. My mic cut out there.
Bill, enjoy. Get that red pen of death.
It's grading season.
It is. I love it.
Already?
Yeah.
Yeah, poor kids.
Elijah, we'll maybe tee it up here a little bit later.
Yeah, I still haven't booked that tea time. I should probably go check and see if it's still available.
Oh, gotcha. Chris Schmidt, we appreciate you all. Thanks for tuning in.